Dear friends, touch your heart and ask yourself, has your life and the lives of your friends and loved ones improved over the last 10 years? Or has it gotten worse? The SDA has walked the ground in Pasir Ris Punggol for over 13 years now. We feel the pain of the bad policies in every resident we speak to. Every time we knock on doors, we meet people at the supermarkets. Every time we speak to people, we feel your pain. Think about the young university graduate who is working in the supermarket as not even a supervisor, but just a cashier. Think about the father who can't sleep at night because he just lost his job and he's wondering how is he going to take care of his family. Think about that old auntie who worries whether she has collected enough cardboard just to pay for a simple, humble lunch. These are the people we are fighting for. And how can we give up? How can the SDA ever give up? The SDA will always fight for a better life for all Singaporeans, because we want the elderly to retire with dignity. We want our young and talented Singaporeans to find good jobs. We demand the irresponsible government spending to be cut to ease the cost of living. And we will press, most importantly, for more assistance for needy Singaporeans to build our nation's greatest resources. That is you and I, our people. My dear friends, the SDA has a heart for the people. We will always be on your side. And people keep asking us, why do you fight? For the longest time, the PAP-led government has been given a free ticket to do as it wishes. It promised that it will plan for long-term prosperity for all Singaporeans. But have they done that? Instead, think about the ruthless, selfish, growth at all cost mantra that has resulted in suffering and yet more suffering for average Singaporeans like you and me. And what is worse, I feel, is that the elite class of PAP leaders are mismanaging our country. And it is not just what I feel, but every Singaporean we speak to, everyone who messages us, who calls us, tells us the same thing. I mean, just look at the last 10 years. I'll give you some examples. Number one, higher taxes that punish the average Singaporean family. Number two, very expensive housing such that our youth are finding it very difficult to start new families. And then we complain about the declining birth rate. Number three, think about the broken and overcrowded, inefficient public transport system. Every day, our fellow Singaporeans are tortured in that transport system. We need a change, my friends. Number four, very importantly, think of the irresponsible immigration policies that are depriving talented Singaporeans like you and me of good jobs. Think also, the rich are getting richer and the poor and the middle class are really getting hammered every day. Think about the weak leaders from the PAP inner circle that everybody is reminding me of, because we just went through the COVID-19 pandemic and every Singaporean says the weak leadership has been exposed. They are saying that our leaders are incapable of steering Singapore through tough times, and every Singaporean wants to have a change, and that's where we come in. Because ask yourself, till today, Singapore has achieved prosperity, but for who? Ask yourself, are Singaporeans a happy group of people? Because as a whole, Singaporeans no longer trust that a central government solely led by one party, the PAP, will bring prosperity and happiness to all, as we always remind each other in our daily pledge. Now I'll share with you the core pain points of the average Singaporeans like you and me. These are the pain points we really face today. Number one, the spike in the cost of living. You know, the man on the street like you and me, we don't need technical details to tell us that the cost of living in Singapore is going way up. But our salaries, our wages are staying stagnant, especially for the working and the middle class like you and me. Average Singaporeans, we are not earning million-dollar minister salaries. That's why we feel the squeeze every day in our lives. Take a look at how the prices have changed in the last 5 years. Our salaries can hardly match the increase in prices of even basic goods and services. Instead of thinking of ways to ease the burden on all of us Singaporeans like you and me, the PAP-led government introduces and wants to still introduce new taxes and increase the rate of the existing ones. This is not right. Look at the water prices. They have gone up nearly 30%. Look at the electricity prices. They have gone up nearly 23%. The polyclinic fees have gone up by even 20%, my dear friends. Even a cup of kopi, the simple coffee and tea you buy, has gone up nearly 20%. But our median salaries, where have they gone? Have they really gone up even half that amount of 15%? Today, we need to ask these questions, and I'm comparing this in very simple comparison with the last general election in 2015. How the prices of basic goods and services have changed versus the median salaries that you and I are getting. Something to think about, my dear fellow Singaporeans. Now, the second core main point that's very painful for average Singaporeans, and you may be facing it too. Maybe one of your loved ones are facing it too. But I'm sure if not yourself, not your family members, then you surely know of young Singaporeans who are losing good jobs due to lax immigration policies. And this is very, very, very painful. But before I go further, I would like to very categorically say to you that foreigners are good for Singapore. Foreigners are good for Singapore. And like us, they are also seeking a better life for themselves, aren't they? But the irresponsible immigration policies of the PAP-led government has led to an excessive influx of foreigners. And that is what we are against. The excessive influx of foreigners at the expense of local Singaporeans. That is what we are against. Because of this, I do not know whether you feel it, but every Singaporean we have been meeting on the road, they are saying that there is a greater tension between Singaporeans and foreigners. Why such a pain in Singapore? More local working professionals, maybe yourself, your family members, are getting retrenched, while the number of foreigners hired, especially in professional positions, has steadily risen over the last few years. Our PMETs are suffering very badly. And I'll just share with you this much, that in the last 9 years, did you know that working professionals in Singapore have forced, or rather have been facing this constant threat of forced retrenchment? And that is very painful. Because at present, if you did not know this, about 70% of Singaporeans, working professional Singaporeans, are retrenched every year. Let me repeat that, because 70% is a very huge, big number. Every year at present, and we have data to back up every point that I'm sharing with you. At present, about 70% of all Singaporeans, working professionals, are retrenched each year. Now, if that is not painful, then I do not know what will be painful enough for us to take action to allow other people to come into Parliament and make our lives better. Because at this same rate, in this same period, the rate of employment for foreign working professionals, it has risen steadily over the same period. It is a problem of policy, not people. Our people, our Singaporeans, are wonderful, good, hardworking, educated, talented individuals. It is not a problem with our people. It is a problem with the policy. And we need a change. That's why vote for SDA. We need your support. Because thirdly, the CPF savings, it is totally a broken retirement scheme. Every door we knock at, every elderly Singaporean we meet, they are saying the same thing. And here's the cold, hard reality about the CPF savings scheme. Did you know that 47% of all CPF members, that is your family members and mine, who turn 55 years old, 47% of them cannot even meet the full retirement sum. And it has been going up over the years. And did you also know that between the ages of 55 to 64, CPF members cannot touch the cash that is in their CPF account? Now, all of us work hard throughout our life, hoping we can withdraw this, but this is a big problem. And thirdly, maybe you don't know this, but 74% receive monthly payouts of under $500 once they turn 65. What can you do in Singapore every month with just $500? And this is an important issue because you and I and every one of us is also going to sooner or later reach the age of 65. And it is not just a problem of the elderly Singaporeans, but it is each and every one's problem that we need to address today. Because as a 65-year-old retiree, let me tell you something. Ask yourself, maybe you have family members who are of that age group. Is $500 monthly enough to live by? And I would say not at all, if not very barely. And I'll give you some examples. Think about the transport cost of the average senior citizen. Because they have a concession card, $64 on the average. Number two, for housing, SNCC charges about $44.50 for a 3-room flat in Pasir Ris. And how do I know it? Because every time we meet residents on our walkabouts, they show us and they tell us the exact numbers. They are telling us the exact problems they are facing. And maybe not only in Pasir Ris, Punggol, maybe it's the same across Singapore. Number three, water and power bill of an average family, about $114 for a 3-room flat. And on the other side, we all need food, water too, and shelter. Food, taking just 3 simple meals a day, not extravagant meals, at a hawker center. Let's take the average of $3 per meal. That already comes up to $270. So if you add up all the figures that I gave you, that is about $492.50. That's barely the $500 that a retiree gets at the age of 65 and above. Is that enough to survive? You need to touch your heart. Ask yourself, why is our suicide rate among the elderly going up? And maybe this particularly, the CPF problem is one of the biggest reasons. My dear friends, we need your support. We need your help to overcome these core pain points of average Singaporeans faced today. And that brings me to the fourth very important point. This pain point is not just the elderly or certain group of people. This pain point is for all Singaporeans. The widening gap between the haves and those have-nots. You know, it's called social inequality. A lot of words, big words. A lot of people ask me to explain it in simple English. And I'll say it in very simple English. The gap between those who have a lot and those who don't have anything. And the PAP government tells us, they tell us in all their national broadcasts and in every newspaper that they are committed to fighting this thing called social inequality. But I tell you something, reality speaks louder than words, and the reality is really, really shameful. For a country, I tell you something, that's first world, for a country that tops global academic scores, we, on the other hand, rank in the bottom 10 in the global inequality index. That's very shameful for us. The incomes of middle-class Singaporeans like you and I have remained stagnant and maybe in many cases gone down, while the salaries of the rich and the richer goes up and up. And this is even, I'll tell you something, as Singapore climbs the ranks of the world's wealthiest nations. The incomes of the middle-class Singaporeans are not going up at all, and you know that. Much of our Singapore's wealth is concentrated in the hands of few, And this is, by the way, according to the Credit Suisse 2018 Global Wealth Report. And as I said earlier, everything that I'm sharing with you, we have statistics to back it up. And as for the rich millionaire ministers, on that same note in Singapore, I mean, a lot of people we meet, they keep asking us, and as for the rich ministers, can they really feel our pain? Can they really understand what the average Singaporean like you and I face on a daily basis? And I quote the words of one of the uncles who I met yesterday. He said they sit in their ivory towers and they craft policies that deepen inequality. I repeat these very important words because we are talking about social inequality. Those who have it now are having even more. Those who don't, we are getting poorer by the day. And this income gap between the highest and the lowest 10% of income earners, I'll tell you something, it is something that's very painful. The gap itself, over the last few years. In the year 2000, you may not know this, but the gap was about $5,486 between the top 10% and the lowest 10% of income earners in Singapore. Now, in the year, I think 2007, the gap went up to $8,236. And in the last report we got, which was for 2017, now the gap is $12,661. Now think about it, from 5,000 something, the gap is going up to $12,661 between the richest and the last 10% group of the earners in Singapore. What are we fighting for? There are many issues that we are fighting for, all Singaporeans like you and I. And I'm going to share with you 4 major issues that we will stand up for all Singaporeans on your part. First thing is, the SDA promises to challenge the PAP government and press it to implement policies that will benefit Singaporeans. That is our first promise. These are our policy proposals that I'm going to be sharing with you that are targeted at helping Singaporeans at different stages in their lives so that we can all live with dignity and enjoy personal prosperity. These policies that I'm going to share with you are crafted with this staunch belief in mind that Singapore is for all Singaporeans and not just for the elite. I repeat the key point, that Singapore is for all Singaporeans like you and me and not just for the elite. So what are we fighting for? First of all, we are going to fight to address the burden of the high cost of living by reducing GST and cutting spending on extravagant public projects. That's the first thing that we're going to fight for. Think about this. The GST, the goods and services tax, today stands at 7%. The PAP-led government of the past has seen it fit to increase GST, and it is saying that they will keep doing that in the coming years. Now, such a move in the coming years will totally, destroy the lower income to middle income Singaporeans who are already grappling with the economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic. You and I know this impact very, very strongly on our families. So the SDA proposes in reducing GST to 3% for basic items such as food, common household goods, and other essential items. Yes, you heard me right. We want to reduce it down to just 3% GST for these basic items. Number 2, we also propose a progressive GST taxation system of between 3% to 15%, where basic goods are taxed the least and luxury goods are taxed at the highest amount. Now, yes, the PAP-led government of the past has also seen it fit to splash billions of dollars of our taxpayers' money on extravagant public projects. To name a few of them, think of these lavish projects. The upcoming Founders Memorial, for one. Think of the Changi Jewel for the other example. Or think of the Ng Teng Fong General Hospital. A lot of people say extravagant spending on these kind of projects. While I will say the development of new infrastructure is necessary. Yes, it is necessary. The important thing is that expenditure must be exercised with prudence, especially when the long-term maintenance costs are also taken into account. And this is not being done because there is no accountability or no accountability partners like us, the alternative parties in government or in parliament, to question them when they do these kind of spendings. So the SDA hopes you will vote for us in this general election because we propose a more stringent set of checks prior to the approval of expenditure on vain-glorious, totally vanity-oriented, glorious mega projects, and to channel these savings, the savings that we get by yielding lesser on these projects, the savings that we yield to developing the most important resource, our people, you and me. That is the first thing that we will raise for you and that we are fighting for. Secondly, we want to tackle social inequality by giving the disadvantaged Singaporeans like you and I a shot at success. Let's not forget, our people are our greatest resource. I repeat that. We, the Singaporeans, you and I, are our greatest resources. At present, Singaporean youth from disadvantaged families, they struggle to even reach the starting line of the level playing field. The odds are stacked against them, and a vast majority are trapped in this vicious cycle of poverty and struggle. Now, the SDA proposes that an extra 1 to 5% of the government's annual net returns on investment. That is 1 to 5% of the government's annual net returns on investment. We propose that be channeled towards helping youth from disadvantaged families. To put things in perspective, in a broader perspective, did you know that the government's returns on investments, they totaled 17 billion last year? Did you know this year, they are projected to hit 18.6 billion. A lot of money. 1% to just 5% to be taken out from this. Because a fraction of this, a little fraction of this would go a long way in helping over 100,000 disadvantaged Singaporean families to break free from this poverty cycle. We are a first world country. We have to think of all Singaporeans. 100,000 disadvantaged families, my dear friends, are today facing this cycle of poverty, and we need to help to break them free from this. The youth especially have a chance to achieve success when given the right tools, the right environment, and we need to give this to them. Think about the right tools and environment in terms of modern technological and equipment. Number 2, maybe conducive after school care in dedicated centers near homes of these Singaporeans. Maybe number 3, caregiver tutors who will not only teach but motivate and tutor them so they can rise up among the rest of us Singaporeans. Now think about it. Did you know that the national budget spending on education, health and social protection, just compared to maybe 2 countries, you will see something very shocking. In Thailand, for example, and even in another country like South Korea, did you know that 50% of the national budget is spent on education, health and social protection? But here in Singapore, we are spending less than 40%. If I am not mistaken, figure stands at only 39% on education, health and social protection. And this is what we here at SDA are fighting for all of you. That is why we need your support on this election day. The third thing in this series of what are we fighting for is to fix the broken CPF retirement scheme. I shared with you in the previous videos how badly it is broken. And I'll tell you something, the phrase often spouted by many elderly Singaporeans, they always say this when we knock on the doors, when we meet them at hawker centers, when we even meet them in the shopping centers. They say it is better to die than to fall ill. And I'm saying this because an elderly lady held my hand and she was not even able to stabilize her movements. And she was holding my hand, and that's when she said these words, "Palji, it is better to die than to fall ill." That were her words. And this speaks multitudes for the plight of aging Singaporeans. Not only must they toil into their twilight ages, into their twilight years, they fear being a financial burden to their children, to the sandwich generation. And it should not come as a suspense. It should really not come as a suspense or even a surprise then that the suicide rates among Singapore's elderly citizens have leaped up very high. And we here in SDA, we propose a tweak on the CPF system so that senior citizens receive their full CPF savings in full. I repeat, the full CPF savings upon hitting the retirement age, currently at 62. Now, it used to be 55, my dear friends. Let's remind each other. We were promised a full return at age 55. Now it has come to 62. And we will push that the full retirement sum be returned to all Singaporeans currently at the retirement age of 62. We propose that a component be reserved for MediSave and MediShield Life so that the elderly have resources in reserve to fund emergency healthcare costs. Of course, we will take care of that. And in addition, with the government serving as a custodian of the people by offering financial assistance to the elderly who fall in between the cracks. This is only right. I repeat, this is only right, seeing that Singaporeans' wealth, or the whole of Singapore's wealth, not the people but the country's wealth, is built upon the collective contribution of each generation, especially our pioneer and Merdeka generations. We owe this to those people. It is only right we take care of them. In this way, our elderly Singaporeans will be able to retire with dignity. In this way, our elderly Singaporeans will benefit from social safety nets in place. And in this way, you and I can be rest assured that when we also reach this elderly retirement age, there will be something in place to take care of us. That every month, elderly Singaporeans only get about $500. But let me also share with you how much household budget is really needed to meet the basic needs in Singapore today. And this is very important because then you compare that with 500 given out. Is that enough to meet the needs of our Singaporean families? Now, if it is a single elderly household, they need about $1,379 per month. Think about that. Number two, if it's just an elderly couple, households with just an elderly couple, they need about $2,351. So the single elderly household needs $1,379. But if it's a couple, elderly, they need about $2,351. And if it is a single person, just age 55 to 64, not reaching that 65 years of age, they need about $1,721 a month. So think about $500 that is coming out from CPF every month. How will it ever be enough to meet the very basic needs? And this is what we are fighting for. The next policy that we're really going to fight for is, especially for the PMETs, our working class Singaporeans, and especially those of you who are middle-aged and are finding it very difficult to find new jobs. Because we're going to fight for good jobs for all Singaporeans by curbing irresponsible immigration policies. Now, the SDA proposes stricter qualifying criteria and regulations for local firms to seek the hiring of foreign working professionals. We will press for tightened quotas on the number that a company can hire, and that these foreign working professionals come from universities on a Singaporean accredited list of universities. And at the same time, we will demand tighter labor audits on companies to ensure that rogue companies do not get away with hiring phantom local staff to boost their army of cheap labor that's coming in from foreign lands. And this is so important because so many of you Singaporeans are always complaining, and we understand your pain. So a vote for SDA, I remind you, is a victory for all common Singaporeans like you and me. A vote for SDA, I repeat, is a victory for all common Singaporeans like you and I. The only way to improve the plight of Singaporeans is to have all of you vote us good leaders in. Good leaders who understand your needs. Good leaders who care for people. Good leaders who will be there with you all the time. Leaders like us who will listen. Leaders like us who will involve the people. Leaders like us who will challenge the PAP-led government to correct the bad policies that are resulting in the suffering faced by Singaporeans today. Leaders who will be there to make your life better, better and better. And leaders who focus on helping people succeed. Now, SDA leaders have strong foundations in the community. We have been serving residents, as I shared earlier, in Pasir Ris Punggol for the last 13 years in a row. Whether it's medical aid, legal aid, or daily lunch boxes that are going out to residents, and there are 7 stations we have already set up throughout Pasir Ris Punggol to help needy and elderly residents with daily lunch over the last 5 years. And to the best of my knowledge, more than 3.5 million lunch boxes have been distributed in the last 5 years alone. And remember, this is without any funding or any resources allocated by the government. And if we get into Parliament, if we get elected, if we get your support, we will be able to scale up all our activities to serve even more Singaporeans like we have been doing in the last 13 years in Pasir Ris Punggol. When you elect us into Parliament on this polling day, we will be better able to voice the concerns of the people like you and I in Parliament. We will be better able to challenge the policies which have led to the greatest suffering of all of average Singaporeans like you and me. We will also be able to involve you in policy decisions and champion policies that put Singaporeans first. We hope that you will give SDA your support. Give us an opportunity to be your voice. Give us an opportunity to be the voice of many Singaporeans who are unable to voice their pains, their daily anxieties and their concerns. We, the SDA, will always be on your side. The Singapore Democratic Alliance will be always with you. We will be always for you. And the most important thing, Singapore Democratic Alliance will proudly serve you, because Singapore, my land.